Enemy Territory Quake Wars is a brand new title from id Software. These are the guys that developed Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake. It's a pure online multiplayer combat game that takes place in the Quake universe, and it features brand new technology from John Carmack called the Mega Texture, and this allows us to render the terrain right to the horizon and have an unbroken, completely unique texture for as far as you can see. It's going to be released on the PC, the 360 and the PS3, and the target is to get that out in 2007.
So it's been a while since we talked to you about Enemy Territory Quake Wars. What have you guys been working on the last few months?
It's almost a year on, and the game is finally approaching beta, so we're really close to having final art, final gameplay features, final functionality. And at this point in the game now, we're working with id Software on optimizations, performance, and general game balancing rather than adding specific new features. In terms of game balance, obviously there are changes we make to the power of weapons and how they're going to, how a vehicle will perform, the speed that it accelerates and that kind of stuff. But there isn't that much that actually gets cut from the game because it's bad for the game in terms of gameplay. You get the odd thing that on paper you thought would work out great, like an acid spleen grenade or something, and you realise that this is just going to be some terribly spammy weapon that would make people sick. So we decided against something like that, but in general we've stuck really closely to the original vision of the project as a spiritual, successor to Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, but having this universe, that comes from Quake, this Strogg invasion of Earth.
Which side do you prefer to play as and why?
Originally, when we first started working on the game, I loved the fact that the Strogg had all of this advanced technology, and I loved playing with all of the gadgets and things. And perhaps that might be because I've been playing loads of Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, the game we worked on with id Software before, and that was a conventional military combat game. But now I've gone kind of full circle again because we've really worked hard to improve things like the vehicle physics and the networking, and this means that the kind of stunts and stuff you can pull off on, like, say, Husky quad bikes, or things you can do in the Anansi hovercopter, or taking down the Strogg vehicles, as a GDF soldier with rocket launchers and stuff. That stuff's just really cool. The Mega Texture technology inherently is pretty efficient at what it does. Despite starting off life as a 6 gigabyte 32,000 by 32,000 pixel texture, it actually only ends up using 20 or 30 megabytes of memory on your computer. So the technology does its best to be as efficient as possible, and that means that we can get as many people as possible into the game by having a lower system specification that would otherwise be the case. But the second thing is that the game itself detects correctly the system that you have. So our programmers have worked really hard with the programmers over at id Software to optimize the game, not only as a whole by making the code and everything that it does more efficient, but also by taking advantage of specific features in many, many, many different video cards and processors. And it seemed a shame to have, this huge player base that wanted to play the game, that were really excited about it because of all the awards it's been winning and everything, but couldn't play it because they weren't into PC gaming and didn't have a PC gaming rig. And so I was really pleased with id Software's announcement, that it was going to be ported to the 360 and the PS3, because there's this huge audience of players now that are going to be able to play the title that otherwise couldn't have done.
Probably the only criticism I've heard of the game over sort of its development cycle is the number of players they're able to play. Is that still going to be locked in at the number you had mentioned previously?
There's this belief that having more players, increasing the quantity of players on a server, trumps quality of experience, and that's obviously not true, not in gaming and not in just about every area of life. The simple fact is that on other multiplayer combat games where you have flags all over the map, you get disbursement of the people on the server. So if you have 60 people on the server and 10 flags, that's only 6 people per flag. That's only 3 people fighting 3 people at any one time on average. In Enemy Territory Quake Wars, there's a natural front line that exists between the territory you're in and the enemy territory, and there's an area of contention where this objective exists, and this front line creates this really intense level of combat. So 24 players on a server is like playing in a 512 player match, because if you were to take the same level of intensity and try and replicate it across a map with 10 different combat locations, that's really what you'd need to get the same experience. So I think that we've done the right thing. We've built the maps to work really well on public servers for 12 versus 12. And then because of the way that clans, work out their plays and things in advance, we're expecting them to have pretty good games with like 5 or 6 aside.
even a rough estimate of when we'll be able to play this game?
The notion of a kind of simultaneous release date would be an arbitrary deadline, and id Software just don't do things like that. They'll work until they're happy that the game is good and that it meets all of their kind of quality criteria and the gameplay is perfect and it's, you know, visually as stunning as they want it to be, and that will be the point at which it's finished. And I think that's why they have that kind of motto, you know, when it's done.